The night was so dark, it looked like the ocean had swallowed the sky. Just after midnight, sailors aboard the USS Indianapolis moved through their routines half awake, expecting nothing more than the low hum of engines and the warm Pacific air moving across the deck. The ship had just completed a mission almost no one on board understood, delivering parts of a new weapon to Tinian. Now she was running alone toward the Philippines, unescorted. Lights darkened, the crew settling in for another quiet stretch at sea. The quiet ended in a single violent moment. A torpedo slammed into the starboard bow with a blast so sharp it felt like the ship itself screamed. Men were thrown from their racks. A second torpedo hit seconds later, ripping into a fuel tank and ammunition storage. Fire tore along the passageways. Bulkheads crumpled. Some sailors woke up already half submerged, water pouring into their compartments so fast it seemed alive. Others opened hatches and saw walls of flame rolling toward them. Power failed almost instantly. Emergency lights flickered, then died. In the radio room, operators tried to send distress calls through the smoke, but no one knew if a single signal had escaped into the night. On the bridge, officers felt the ship list and understood the truth before anyone said it. The Indianapolis wasn't going to survive. From the impact to the sinking, only about 12 minutes passed. Men ran for the rails, grabbing life jackets, floater nets, and anything that would float. A few rafts were cut loose, but most were swallowed by the tilt of the deck as the bow plunged deeper. Sailors slipped across the wet steel as the stern rose behind them. Some managed to jump clear. Others were pulled down with the suction as the ship vanished. Then the Indianapolis was gone, and the survivors were alone in the water. When the chaos settled, roughly 900 men floated in a wide slick of fuel and debris. Some were burned, some bleeding, some half-dazed from the blast. They tried to group together, calling out for friends in the darkness, expecting rescue ships to arrive within hours. After all, the Navy tracked its vessels. Someone would notice when the Indianapolis failed to check in. Dawn made the truth impossible to ignore. Light revealed hundreds of men scattered across the swells, many without rafts, many clinging to pieces of wood or cargo. The ocean stretched empty in every direction. No smoke on the horizon, no airplane engine, no movement besides the slow roll of the sea and the drifting patches of oil staining the water around them. Then the sharks came. At first they circled at a distance, dark shadows slipping beneath the men, brushing against legs, testing. Some sailors tried to keep still. Others kicked and splashed without meaning to, making themselves impossible to ignore. And everywhere beneath them, in the deep blue, was movement. The first attack came before noon. A man who had drifted away called for help. Before anyone could reach him, the water erupted. When it settled, he was gone. Panic rippled through the clusters of survivors. Men pulled their legs tight against their bodies, gripping each other's vests, trying to form circles like officers shouted. But there were hundreds of them, and the ocean didn't care about formations. As hours passed, the sun became its own kind of predator. Skin blistered, eyes burned, lips cracked open. The smell of oil clung to everything, mixing with sweat and blood. Some men begged for water. Others whispered to themselves. A few dipped their hands and drank the sea despite every warning drilled into them during training. Within hours, those men began hallucinating, shouting that they could see islands only feet away, or ships, or home. Some unbuckled their life jackets and tried swimming toward invisible shores. No one brought them back. When night fell, the darkness became suffocating. Men heard splashes that didn't sound like waves. They felt brushings against their legs, sudden jerks at their vests, and sometimes the unmistakable thud of something large bumping their bodies from below. Survivors later said the worst part wasn't the attacks. They rarely saw the attacks. It was the moments when someone beside them simply stopped talking. A yelp, a splash, then silence. By the second day, the chain of survivors was thinning. Some had drowned. Some had lost consciousness and slipped under when their vests loosened. Some had been taken by sharks. Others simply gave up, their bodies folding as the heat and thirst destroyed their strength. Those who remained tried to keep each other awake, talking about their homes, families, food, anything to remind themselves of the world that existed beyond the endless horizon. On the third day, a storm rolled in. At first, it felt like a blessing. The rain hit hard, fresh and cool. Men opened their mouths and let it pour over swollen tongues. They held their life jackets up to catch droplets and pass them around. But the waves rose next. Lightning cracked across the sky, and swells tossed men into each other and into debris. Some vanished in the dark water. Others were pulled away from their groups, consumed by the storm before dawn returned. Still, no rescue came. Because of communication failures and outdated tracking procedures, no one on land realized the Indianapolis was missing. The survivors weren't waiting for rescue. They were waiting to be discovered by accident. By the fourth day, the ocean had stripped most of them to the core. Many could barely talk. Their eyes were sunken, their skin peeled. Some were covered in fuel burns so severe the touch of water made them shudder. A few prayed out loud, others whispered to no one. Most floated with their heads angled upward, drawing ragged breaths, simply trying to stay alive for one more minute. Then, sometime late that morning, a miracle passed overhead. A Navy pilot on a routine patrol spotted a long streak of oil on the surface. At first he thought it was a submarine trail. Then he saw small dots moving inside it. Curious, he descended. As the plane swept low across the water, the survivors saw it, an engine, a shape, a chance. Men waved frantically, lifting their arms, life jackets, anything. The pilot saw faces staring up at him, dozens of them. He radioed the sighting immediately. Rescue began at once, though at once still meant hours. Lieutenant Adrian Marks, flying a PBY seaplane, broke protocol and landed on rough water to pull men aboard. The landing damaged his aircraft beyond flight, but he didn't care. He and his crew hauled survivors inside until the plane was packed body to body. When there was no more room, they tied men to the wings, securing them so the waves wouldn't wash them away again. Destroyers arrived later, throwing nets and lines to the men still in the water. Some sailors cried as they were lifted on board. Others were too weak to speak. More than one man asked, in a hoarse whisper, if the ship beneath him was real or just another hallucination. Out of nearly 1,200 aboard the Indianapolis, only 316 survived. They carried the physical wounds for weeks. They carried the memories for the rest of their lives. Some said the worst nightmares came years later. Dreams of the dark water, the endless waiting, and the silent moments when someone beside them slipped away without a sound. The story of the Indianapolis wasn't only about the sinking. It was about what happened afterward, when hundreds of men were left in the open ocean with no food, no water, and no certainty that anyone would ever find them. It was about the fight to stay alive when the sea itself seemed determined to take them. Thank you for listening to Horrifying Survival Stories. Subscribe for more stories of those who faced the impossible and lived.